Today we shall discuss about the topics like force acting between two straight parallel conductors and also how to convert a moving coil galvanometer into ammeter and voltmeter. We already studied about the force acting on a single conductor carrying current when kept in an uniform magnetic field. That means, suppose if this is the conductor, if it is kept in an uniform magnetic field like this, and if some current is passed through this conductor, then what's the force acting on this conductor? The force acting on this conductor of length L is given by F equal to B I L sin theta. What is B? Uniform magnetic field. What is I? Current flowing through the conductor. And what is L? Length of the conductor. What is theta? Theta is the angle between the conductor and the magnetic field. In this case, theta is equal to 90. Thereby, for this example, F equal to BIL, we get sin 90 means BIL. So, we have studied already this. The general equation for the force acting on a conductor carrying current when kept in an uniform magnetic field is this. But today we shall know about what's the force between two straight parallel conductors. Instead of one single conductor, I consider two conductors and I am going to keep the conductors parallel to each other, long conductors parallel to each other in external field, magnetic field. Look here, I have taken a conductor now. What's the length of the conductor means L. L is the length of the conductor. This conductor, through this conductor I pass the current I1. Then in the region around the conductor there will be magnetic field. The direction of magnetic field can be determined by making use of right hand clasp rule. So if I apply right hand clasp rule, thumb finger gives the direction of current, means current is flowing upward. Fingers curling gives the direction of magnetic field. Curling finger gives the direction of magnetic field. Let B1 be the magnetic field produced due to the current I1 flowing in the conductor. At this point, if I want to find the direction of magnetic field, the simple method or technique in which we adopt is simply draw one tangent. So if I draw the tangent like this, it gives the direction of magnetic field at this point due to the current flowing in this conductor. What is this direction now? It is perpendicular to the plane of the board or plane of the figure, directed inwards. That means this field B1 is said to be directed inwards. Okay. Now, in this field B1 produced due to the current I1, I am going to keep another conductor. Say for example, this is conductor 1. Now I keep second conductor. That means our intention is to apply an external magnetic field to the second conductor. That is why I made use of first conductor magnetic field as an external magnetic field to the second conductor. Now the second conductor is said to be placed in the external magnetic field B1 of the first conductor. How is this field once again? Directed inwards, perpendicular to the plane of the figure or plane of the board. Now we shall find out what is the magnetic field B1. B1 produced due to the current I1. Using Ampere circuital law, we also derived an expression for the magnetic field at a point around a long conductor, long straight conductor. What is that expression? B1 equal to mu naught over 2 pi. What is the current flowing through the first conductor? It is I1. Okay. Let the two conductors be kept separated by distance D divided by D. That means I am considering the magnetic field at this point, which is at a distance D from the first conductor. So at this distance, this is the point which is at a distance d. Due to this current, the magnetic field is this. This we can obtain by making use of this one Ampere's circuital law. Okay. Then the second conductor now is said to be placed in the magnetic field of first conductor. Certainly what happens if you pass the current now through the second conductor? Once again in the region around the second conductor, a magnetic field is set up. But this magnetic field will be due to the current I2. This is the magnetic field. Now there will be interaction between this magnetic field and this field. This field is due to the current I2 and this field is due to the first conductor. Due to the interaction of these two magnetic fields, what happens now? Force act on this conductor. What is the force? Now magnetic field due to I1 is this. Force acting on conductor 2 due to current I2 is given by F. Force acting on the second conductor F2 due to first conductor, because the second conductor is kept in the magnetic field of first conductor. Therefore force acting on the second conductor due to the current flowing through the first conductor F21, it is given by B I L sin theta, but theta in this case is 90 degree, because theta is the angle between the conductor and the magnetic field. In this case the conductor is like this, whereas magnetic field is directed inwards, therefore the angle is 90 degree, therefore sin 90 is equal to 1. But what is B? Replace B. How do you replace B? Replace B by B1, because the second conductor is in the magnetic field of first conductor. Then I means current flowing through this conductor. Don't take this current, because you are finding the force acting on this conductor, and that's the case, then current through that conductor itself should be taken. Therefore I2. What's the length of each conductor? Length of this conductor and also length of this conductor are same, one and the same, and it's equal to L. So B1 I2 L. Now you make the substitution for B1. What is B1? Mu naught over 2 pi, then I1 divided by D into I2L. So F21 is equal to mu naught over 2 pi I1 into I2 divided by D into L. This is the force acting on which conductor? Second conductor, when it is kept in the magnetic field of first conductor and when some current is passed through it. What is the direction of this force? See, to find the direction of magnetic field, we apply right hand clasp rule. Already we applied here. To find the direction of the force acting on the second conductor, we make use of left hand rule, Fleming's left hand rule. Apply the left hand rule. Stretch the first 3 fingers of your left hand according to the rule. If the forefinger represents the direction of field, field is inwards. Then if middle finger represents the direction of current, okay, what should be the direction of the force acting on this conductor? Force acting on this conductor I have written like this, F21. Is it right? Check it out. Okay, by applying Fleming's left hand rule, forefinger is the field, then middle finger should be the direction of current. Remember, we have passed the current in upward direction, therefore you cannot hold the middle finger pointing in the downward direction. You should have to hold pointing upwards like this. So, forefinger field inwards, current flowing upwards all along middle finger, then thumb finger represents the direction of force. That means force acting on the conductor 2 which is nothing but F21, is directed towards the conductor 1. Now similarly, we follow the same principle. In the second figure, I have taken another conductor. Second conductor, this is second conductor and this is first conductor. Through second conductor, I am going to pass a different current. In the first current, I passed the current I1, whereas in the second conductor, conductor 2, I pass current I2. Magnitude of the currents are different, whereas length of each conductor is same. Again, apply the clasp rule to find the direction of magnetic field. Hold the conductor by means of your right hand. Thumb finger gives the direction of current which is flowing upwards. Fingers clasping is the direction of magnetic field at this point. That means to the left side of the conductor, I need to find the field at this point. Here what I have done, to the right side of this conductor, I have found out the field here. Here to the left side, this is the conductor, left side at this point, I need to find the direction of magnetic field. So all that I do is simply I draw one tangent. If I draw one tangent, this tangent is said to be pointing outwards, whereas in this case the tangent is said to be pointing inwards. So the tangent drawn all along curling finger direction gives the direction of magnetic field. So that is B2 is the magnetic field due to the current I2 flowing in the second conductor. Then in this field, now I am going to keep the first conductor. That means the magnetic field B2 of the second conductor will act as an external field to the first conductor. Okay. Now by keeping the first conductor in the external magnetic field of second conductor, pass the current. What's the current I passed? I1. Find out the magnetic field B2. So magnetic field due to I2 is given by, according to this equation, B2 equal to same, no change, constant remains as it is. But what's the current I am passing? I am passing the current I2. So instead of I1, you write I2. Distance between the two conductors remains to be same, because the first conductor is kept in the magnetic field of second conductor. At what distance I have kept? Look at like this. This is first conductor. In this case, this is second conductor. So distance between the two conductors in both the cases remains to be same, which is nothing but D. Here I have written one separate figure, individually I have written. Okay. Now, what is the force acting? Force acting on conductor 1 due to current I1. It is given by, instead of F21, I write F12, because look here, force acting on the conductor 1 due to magnetic field of conductor 2, that is by F12, force acting on conductor 1 due to current flowing or magnetic field of second conductor. F12 is given by, once again according to this equation, what can I write? Instead of B1, I write B2. Instead of I2, I write I1, L remains to be same. Because the current flowing through the first conductor is I1, that is why I have written I1. And the first conductor is kept in the magnetic field of second conductor, that is B2. That is why I have written B2, L remains same. Substitute for this now, mu naught over 2 pi, then I2 divided by D into I1L. That is F12 equal to mu naught over 2 pi I1 into I2 divided by D into L. So this is the force acting on the first conductor due to current flowing in the second conductor. If I combine this figure and this figure, generally now I can write like this. This is first conductor, this is second conductor. What the distance of separation between them? Distance of separation between them is D. And what's the length of each conductor? Length of each conductor is L. Then current flowing through this is first conductor is I1, through this it is I2. Okay, here this is the direction of magnetic field according to right hand clasp rule. On this conductor, this is the direction of magnetic field according to right hand clasp rule. Force according to Fleming's left hand rule, it is given by F21. On this it is F12. If you want to find the direction of the force acting on this conductor, once again you can apply Fleming's left hand rule. How? 4 fingers should represent the direction of field. Stretch the first 3 fingers of your left hand. 4 finger, field is directed outwards. Then current is flowing upwards. Turn the finger like this, current is flowing upwards. Thumb finger gives the direction of force. Now the direction of force on the first conductor is directed towards second conductor. So this is how we can find the force acting on the first conductor. So combination of these two figures yields this figure finally. Now you can notice what the force now between two conductor. Force on each conductor, magnitude wise it is same, direction wise it is different. F12 mu naught over 2 pi I1 I2 d divided by d into L. Here F21 mu naught over 2 pi I1 into I2 upon d into L. So F21 and F12 are one and the same. So it is found that F12 is equal to F21, but I write minus because the directions are opposite. The directions are opposite like this. That is why F12 should be equal to F21. Why negative sign? Opposite direction. So this also indicates that Newton's third law holds good here in this case. That means force between two straight parallel conductor, if the current flows in the same direction, then it is always attractive force. For which current? For like currents. Like currents means what? Currents flowing in the same direction. Suppose if I reverse the current in any one conductor, don't reverse the current in both the conductors. If you do so, then situation remains to be same. So change the direction of current either in the first conductor or in the second conductor. Suppose if I change the direction of current in the first conductor, then B1, B2 direction, F12 and F21 all direction changes. In such a case, what happens means the force acting on the second conductor will be like this, whereas force acting on the first conductor will be like this. That means both the forces are once again opposite to each other, but they are directed away from each other. Whereas in the initial case said to be directed towards each, now they are said to be directed away. So repulsive force for anti-clockwise or unlike currents, sorry, not anti-clockwise, unlike currents or anti-parallel. Parallel currents initially, now anti-parallel or unlike currents. It is always repulsive. This conductor moves away from this. Suppose if I want to find the force per unit length acting on each conductor. Let us find out the force acting per unit length on each conductor. It is found that F12 is equal to F21. In general, I can call this as F, which is nothing but force per unit length of each conductor. Force per unit length of each conductor. What is that force? F equal to F12 we have, F21 we have, but I write this as F12 by L, F21 by L. If that's the case, what is F12 there? F12 is, you just simply take this L to the denominator, the left hand side. Okay, then what happens? It becomes mu naught over 2 pi I1 I2 divided by d. So this is nothing but force per unit length acting on each of the conductor. That means, suppose if I consider 1 meter length, unit length means 1 meter length. Again here 1 meter length. on each of this unit length, what's the force that acts means F, which is equal to mu naught over 2 pi I1 I2 by d. So L I have taken to the denominator, force per unit length, represented in a simple way as small f. Force between two, if you take, it may be attractive or repulsive. Then force on each conductor, if you take, this will be the force on each conductor, either on the first conductor or on the second conductor. Magnitude remains same. But on every unit length, if you consider the force, then this will be the force acting on every unit length. Using this equation, now we can define ampere. Means 1 ampere. How do you define 1 ampere? To define 1 ampere, what I do means, I substitute the value to this equation. What is mu naught? Mu naught is 4 pi into 10 to the power of minus 7. What? Divided by 2 pi. So, I1, let us take the current flowing through each conductor as equal to 1 ampere. That is what I have to define. Current through this conductor 1 ampere, what does it mean? Current through this conductor 1 ampere, what does it mean? So, 2 pi 1 into 1, this is F, divided by, let the distance of separation between the two conductors be equal to 1 unit, means 1 meter. Then pi and pi get cancelled, 2. So, F equal to 2 into 10 to the power of minus 7 Newton per meter. That means, current through each of the long conductor is said to be 1 ampere. Said to be 1 ampere when the force per unit length on each conductor is equal to 2 into 10 to the power of minus 7 Newton per meter, provided the conductor should be kept separated by a distance of 1 meter in free space. By keeping two conductors separated by a distance of 1 meter in free space, and now if I pass some current, and if this current produces a force of 2 into 10 to the power of minus 7 Newton per meter, that means on this unit length, this much of force should act. Again on this unit length, this much of force should act. If this amount of force acts on every unit length, when two conductors are kept separated by a distance of 1 meter in vacuum or in air, then the current through each of the conductor is said to be equal to 1 ampere. So, remember this definition, because this derivation frequently appears in the board examination for 5 marks. Okay. Now, let us move on to how to convert a moving coil galvanometer into ammeter and as well as voltmeter. Already we studied in our previous class the construction and working of a moving coil galvanometer. Suppose if I consider moving coil galvanometer, then we know that it's a device, electric device or electromechanical device also we can say, which is used to detect the current, very feeble current, even of the order 10 to the power of minus 6 ampere, means microampere. And it works on the principle that when current is passed through a coil of wire, copper wire, kept in an uniform magnetic field, then it experiences torque. So, this is the principle on which a moving coil galvanometer works. Then how to convert? To convert moving coil galvanometer into ammeter. Okay. Suppose, let us consider like this. This is the galvanometer. Usually galvanometer will have its own resistance because it has got rectangular coil. This is the pointer of galvanometer. Suppose if I pass the current through this galvanometer, say for example 0.1 microampere, then the pointer right from 0, it may deflect slightly up to here. Suppose if I pass 0.2 microampere, then deflection may be up to here. Likewise 0.3 microampere, here 4, 5. Finally 0.4 microampere, 0.5 microampere. Okay. So maximum means now the pointer can deflect up to this point. This is the end point. Suppose if you pass a current greater than this, say for example, if I pass 2 microampere, for example, what happens? The pointer cannot move further. That means the galvanometer cannot show further deflection because this is the end point. At this point it got pegged up. Pegged up means it cannot move further. There is some disturbance to move further. It is tightened up at this stage. So therefore it is not able to move further. What does it indicate? Even if you pass 5 microampere current or 100 microampere current, then also there will be no deflection, no more deflection. When once it comes to this end point, it's over. That clearly indicates that this galvanometer G can measure a maximum current of 0.5 microampere. It can detect a current of 0.5 microampere, not more than that. And this maximum current in which this galvanometer can detect, and that current can be considered as IG. That means full scale deflection current. Full scale, right from 0 to what? To the end point. That is full scale deflection. So this is the meaning of IG. So specifically IG stands for current to produce full scale deflection in the galvanometer or maximum current indicated by galvanometer. If there is a circuit, say for example, there is one circuit here connected, that means one resistor is there connected to a battery. Okay. Say for example some resistance R is there. Through this, if I pass the current I equal to 10 microampere current I pass, I have to measure what is the current that is flowing through this resistor or in this circuit. So what I have to do? I am going to connect this galvanometer here because we know that galvanometer measures and detects the current. If I connect the galvanometer here, what is going to happen? What may happen? This galvanometer maximum it can detect a current IG is equal to how much? 0.5 microampere. When such a large current flows through the galvanometer, this galvanometer is not able to sustain that current. Then what happens to the galvanometer? The pointer may move fast, so quick, because it's a sensitive device. Even for small current, it deflects quickly. So the pointer may move fast. Due to this, it may get damaged. Or the coil inside this galvanometer may not able to withstand this current. The coil may get heated up and the galvanometer may burn off. It may burn off. So either the pointer may get damaged or the galvanometer itself may burn off because of this current. Then what is the use of using this galvanometer? Of course, we have to use this galvanometer by some method or by doing some modification to it to measure the current flowing in the circuit. Then what is the modification I do? I am going to bypass majority of the current from the galvanometer. For that, I connect one resistance, low resistance, very low resistance in parallel. Now what happens? If I do so, then what the current here coming out? I, which is equal to 10 microampere. Here because of junction, it branches out. Some current will flow through the galvanometer. Remaining current will flow through this resistor which is connected parallel to this. What's the maximum current in which the galvanometer can detect? 0.5. This is nothing but Ig. This is nothing but I. Main current is 10 microampere which is to be measured. So I gets divided partly into Ig. Remaining current flows here. What's the remaining current here? The remaining current is I minus Ig. This current flows through this resistance. Let us call this resistance as S. Understand? R is the resistance of the main circuit. Whereas S is the small resistance connected across the galvanometer. Now, the galvanometer, what happens? If current comes here, maximum current flows through the galvanometer, thereby 0.5 microamp current flows and the galvanometer shows full scale deflection. If 0.5 amp current flows through this, what about the remaining current out of 10 microampere? Remaining current, that is 9.5 microampere current flows through the shunt. That means majority of the current flows through the shunt. Only small current is made to flow through what? Flow through this galvanometer. What is the current that flows here? Now the current that flows here is only 0.5. I read this, I represent this reading as 10 microampere. Sir, how come it is possible? Because through the galvanometer only 0.5 microampere current is flowing, whereas you represent that by main current. How? It is because whatever current that flows through the galvanometer producing full scale deflection, that current, what is the maximum current flowing here? 0.5. This current is made proportional to this main current. That means 0.5 microampere of current, which is maximum through the galvanometer, is always found to be proportional to the main current that flows. That is why I represent this by 10 microampere. So 9.5 plus 0.5, totally it becomes 10 microampere. Okay? Then I can even divide this like this. I can calibrate like this. This is 0 and I can write this as how much? 5 microampere. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? So like that I can calibrate the galvanometer scale. Suppose if I consider the galvanometer, now what's the current that flows through the galvanometer? Maximum current 0.5 microampere. Okay? This is nothing but low resistance connected across the galvanometer. Suppose now in this case, if the current is 100 microampere, main current instead of 10 microampere, if the main current I is 100 microampere, here what happens? Once again it branches out into two parts. Some current will flow through the galvanometer. What's that current? Ig, 0.5. Remaining current, that's I minus Ig, has to flow through this resistance S. What will be the remaining current here? 99.5 microampere. 99.5 plus 0.5, total it becomes 100 microampere. For 0.5 microampere itself, the galvanometer shows full scale deflection. Now here I represent this reading shown by galvanometer as equal to 100 due to calibration, and then I can calibrate this as equal to 50 microampere, then this as equal to 0. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, That means whatever may be the main current, through the galvanometer only the maximum current can flow. Like that, the resistance value should be adjusted. And this resistance which is connected across the galvanometer to make majority of the current to flow through it and to keep the galvanometer safe without getting damaged. This resistance is called as shunt resistance. What is meant by shunt resistance means it is a low resistance connected across the galvanometer. What is the purpose of connecting the shunt? What does it does? It is going to regulate the current. That means it allows majority of the current to flow through it and only small current through the galvanometer, keeping the galvanometer safe. And one more point, mind it, you have to remember this. Whatever full scale deflection the galvanometer shows, that full scale deflection current itself is the maximum current and we represent that by Ig. That full scale deflection current, that is 0.5 microampere, always reads the current equivalent to 100 microampere, that means equivalent to main current. I am not saying that 0.5 microampere is equal to 100, 0.5 never be equal to 100. So, the current, full scale deflection current is always able to show the main current. Like that, the scale in the galvanometer should be modified or calibrated. Calibration means marking the readings equivalently, proportionately to what? To the maximum current and also to the main current. That's the method of doing the calibration. Now, I want to calculate what is the value of S. Suppose if I want to convert this galvanometer into ammeter. This is ammeter now. What is meant by ammeter means, or when do we convert a galvanometer into ammeter means, a galvanometer can be converted into ammeter by connecting a low resistance known as shunt resistance parallel to it. Ammeter is also a device which is used to measure the current. Ammeter can measure large current, whereas galvanometer can measure very weak current, small current. So, if I connect one low resistance shunt in parallel with the galvanometer, the whole combination, this parallel combination of G and S is going to act like. If I want to convert this galvanometer into ammeter to measure 100 microampere main current, what should be the value of S? Similarly, in this example, if I want to convert this galvanometer to measure the current of 10 microampere, what should be the value of shunt? How do you calculate that? The calculation is very easy. So, all that I am going to do is, I use simply the Ohm's law. Look here. According to Ohm's law, potential difference across G is equal to potential difference across S. See, this is G, okay, and this is S. Since both are parallel to each other, the potential difference across each remains to be same. That means Vg is equal to Vs. What is the current that flows through the galvanometer? Ig only. What is that current flows through the shunt? I minus Ig. What is the main current to be measured? I. Either it may be 10 microampere, 100 microampere, 50 microampere. Vg, according to Ohm's law, V, potential difference across G is current flowing through it is Ig into its resistance. Vs, potential difference across S. What is the current flowing through it? I minus Ig into S. Now S equal to Ig into G divided by I minus Ig. See, this is how we can calculate the value of shunt resistance to be connected to the galvanometer to convert this whole combination into an ammeter. S equal to Ig into G. Ig is nothing but full scale deflection current, G resistance of the galvanometer, then I main current to be measured. Whenever you want to measure a different amount of current to be measured is I. If the current to be measured changes, then the shunt value also changes. Usually shunt resistance is always a very low resistance. And we may notice one thing here. A doubt may arise in your mind. Suppose if you connect an ammeter to one of the circuit. See, this is the circuit now. Let us consider this entire thing is ammeter. R is a resistance. Okay. Now the whole combination connected to a battery. My intention is to measure the current that flows in the circuit. For that I am making use of ammeter. See, we may wonder here, or a doubt may arise in our mind, by connecting one ammeter, the resistance of the circuit may change. Suppose if the main circuit resistance here, if it is equal to, let us say 100 ohm, galvanometer also got one resistance. Added to that, we have connected one more resistance in parallel. So extra resistance we are connecting to are in series. What is the extra resistance? S and G, which are parallel to each other, are said to be connected in series to R. If that is the case, then the resistance of the entire circuit may change, and the main current to be measured, say for example the main current to be measured is 100 microampere, this may also change. This is doubt which may arise in your mind. By connecting ammeter, its resistance may change the main current. That is what usually we feel or we may think. Of course, our thinking may be right, but connecting a galvanometer is not going to change the resistance of the main circuit too much, because the effective resistance of the ammeter is always low, because it's a parallel combination of G and S. In case of parallel combination of resistors, effective resistance always becomes too small. Suppose if the shunt has got a resistance of, let us say 2 ohm. If the galvanometer has got a resistance of 100 ohm, calculate the effective resistance. Effective resistance R effective of ammeter is equal to, these two are in parallel. Apply the parallel combination formula. Parallel combination formula means S and as well as G. This is one resistance, this is another resistance. Formula is S into G divided by S plus G. So don't worry, you are going to study about this in current electricity topic. Directly I am making use of this formula, but there in detail you are going to study about it. What is S now? S is equal to 2, then G is equal to 100 divided by S plus G. Okay, S plus G. So S is once again 2, then plus 100. So you just calculate. This turns out to be 200, 102. Okay, 200 divided by 102. These two resistors. So the effective value. So it is almost, what happens? It is less than 2. So that low value resistance, whole ammeter resistance I am telling. Entire ammeter resistance now reduces nearly to what? To less than 2. Say for example, let us say around 1.98, something like that. So 1.9 or 2 ohm resistance is not too large when compared to 100 ohm. So that is why even after introducing ammeter, the effective resistance is not going to change too much. Thereby main current is also not going to change too much. Hence inclusion of ammeter in the circuit is not going to alter the main current. So this is how we can understand or we can give the clarification to this. Now next let us move on to the conversion of galvanometer into voltmeter. We studied the conversion of galvanometer into ammeter. Now let us study the conversion of galvanometer into voltmeter. If you understand the conversion of galvanometer into ammeter, then conversion of galvanometer into voltmeter becomes easy. Suppose, let us consider like this. There is a galvanometer. Or else we shall consider one main circuit itself. This one circuit. Okay. Let Q be the resistance or P be the resistance, which is about 100 ohms or whatever it may be. Let the potential difference across this P be V. Okay. And I consider this V as equal to 10 volt. So P has got some value 100 ohms, 200 ohms like that. Say for example 100 ohm. I want to measure the potential difference across this resistance. Suppose if I connect galvanometer to measure the potential difference, how do you connect galvanometer? Remember, ammeter in a circuit should be connected always in series to measure the current, whereas voltmeter should be connected in parallel to measure the potential difference or to measure the voltage. But I am not going to consider directly the voltmeter. First I consider galvanometer. I connect the galvanometer here. So this is nothing but galvanometer. What's the main current? Main current is I. Suppose before connecting this galvanometer, then if I want to find the current flowing through this resistor, then what's the formula? I equal to V by R. What is potential difference? V by R. R means P. This is once again according to Ohm's law, where you study in current electricity topic. What is V? V is 10. What is P? 100, like this. So I get the current of about 0.1 ampere of current before connecting this galvanometer. Okay. Now I connect this galvanometer. Now what happens? This current, because of junction or because of branching, one more branch is connected. Here it gets divided into two parts. Some current will flow through galvanometer. What is that current that flows through the galvanometer? Let us say Ig, which produces full scale deflection. I consider this Ig as once again equal to 0.5 microampere. Okay, 0.5 microampere. Now, what is the potential difference? In general, the resistance is P. In general, the potential difference is V. What is the current flowing through this galvanometer? How do you calculate? Already we know that Ig, that's the maximum current in which galvanometer produces full scale deflection. Suppose if you want to find the current flowing through the galvanometer, let I dash be the current flowing through the galvanometer. How do you find? I dash equal to, once again Ohm's law. Potential difference across P is V, potential difference across G is also V, because these two are parallel. In case of parallel combination, two resistors are, when we connect two resistors in parallel, potential difference always remains to be same. That means if 10 volt is the potential difference across P, 10 volt will be the potential difference once again across G. That means potential difference across P, across G remains to be same. Therefore, I dash equal to, I write V as the potential difference across G, which is equal to potential difference across P, divided by resistance. What is the resistance of the galvanometer? G is the resistance of the galvanometer. Suppose the current that is flowing through the galvanometer, if this current I dash becomes greater than Ig. What is Ig? I told you that maximum current or full scale deflection current 0.5 microampere. Now whatever current that is flowing through the galvanometer, that's I dash, if it becomes greater than this, once again the galvanometer gets damaged, because galvanometer can detect or measure maximum current of 0.5 microampere. If you pass a current larger than this, certainly it gets damaged. Then how to use? So if I greater than Ig, then galvanometer galvanometer gets damaged. Okay, then what we have to do? We have to make this I dash as equal to Ig. If I dash is equal to Ig, then galvanometer is safe. G is safe. Galvanometer G is safe. All that you need to do is simply connect one I resistance. Where to connect? Connect I resistance in series with this galvanometer. Remember, galvanometer has already got one resistance. In addition to that, I connect one more resistance. This is nothing but R. Combination of two resistors in series, what happens? The effective resistance means the total resistance is going to increase. When the resistance increases, that means opposition is large for the flow of current. Now what happens? Current through this branch gets reduced. This is how we can make the current I dash flowing through this branch as equal to Ig. Now whatever current that is flowing through this branch, that becomes equal to Ig. Now the galvanometer is safe. Now the combination of this galvanometer along with I resistance in series is going to act like, this combination is going to act like voltmeter. Combination is going to act like voltmeter. So if you connect one I resistance R in series with the galvanometer G, then this combination is going to act like voltmeter. Whereas in case of ammeter, we connected to the galvanometer, we connected one low resistance in parallel known as shunt. Now this combination is going to act like ammeter. Understand? So this is what we do to measure the potential difference. We use galvanometer as an voltmeter by connecting one I resistance, so that the current flowing through this branch, that means through this voltmeter, is Ig. Now what is? Find out the potential difference across this voltmeter. What is the potential difference across this voltmeter? This is the voltmeter. So this is voltmeter V. Now potential difference across this is nothing but V. Find it out. V equal to, according to Ohm's law, current flowing through this is nothing but Ig. That means I dash equal to Ig. Okay, current through this is Ig. Current divided by resistance. Resistance of what? Total resistance. These two are in series. For series combination of resistors, effective resistance is given by sum of these two. So if Ig, let us use capital I, Ig is the current producing full scale deflection, then Ig divided by R plus G. Okay. So this is how we can measure the potential difference across any 2 points of a circuit. Wherever you have to measure the potential difference, there you connect voltmeter across it in parallel. If V is the potential difference, say for example, if potential difference is 100 volt or 10 volt, then this 10 volt potential difference can be determined by making use of this formula theoretically. Ig is the current producing full scale deflection. Then what about R? R is the I resistance connected in series with the galvanometer. Then what is G? G is the galvanometer resistance itself. Suppose if you want to change the potential difference to be measured, say for example, I have to measure the potential difference of 10 volt. For 10 volt potential difference, for V equal to 10 volt, what is the resistance to be connected? Some value I am going to connect. Say for example, R I am going to connect this as equal to around 2000 ohms. See, this is a random value I am giving. Actually, we have to calculate and we have to give the value because we have not taken the value of current here. So, suppose if I want to measure a potential difference of 10 volt, then the value of R to be connected in series with G, let us assume that is equal to 2000 ohm. Suppose if you want to measure a potential difference of 100 volt, that means I want to convert this voltmeter into an voltmeter to measure potential of 100 volt. Initially I converted this into a voltmeter to measure 10 volt potential difference. Now I want to convert this into a voltmeter to measure a larger potential difference of 100 volt. Then in this case, resistance value not be 2000 ohm. Here we have to use a different value. Okay, we have to use a different value. It is not equal to 2000 or cannot be equal to 2000. Certainly it will be a different value. So what does it indicates? If the potential difference range to be measured changes, value of I resistance to be connected in galvanometer should also be changed. So this is the idea behind this. Now let us calculate what is the actual value of R to be connected. Cross multiply this R plus G, okay, R plus G equal to Ig by V. Okay, this goes here, this comes here. Then I want to calculate only R. R equal to, I think R plus G. R equal to, now let's go back. V equal to potential difference, V equal to current, that is Ig divided by, here we made what? We made one mistake here. So please correct this. V equal to potential difference across this is V equal to Ig, that's current flowing, into resistance. What is the resistance of these two? It is R plus G. Okay, R plus G. So this is the value of potential difference either across this or across this. I want to calculate particularly value R. R is equal to, now cross multiply V over R plus G equal to V over Ig. What is the value of R now? R equal to V over Ig. Shift this to this side, minus G. So this is the value of I resistance to be connected in series with the galvanometer to convert this into a voltmeter to measure the potential difference V. Remember, whenever we need to measure different potential difference, different value of resistance should be connected. If you change V, R should also be changed so that Ig through galvanometer should always remain constant, it is not going to increase. If you want to make Ig constant by changing V, then R should also be changed. So this is the formula to used to find the value of I resistance to be connected to convert a galvanometer into voltmeter. So we studied about the conversion of galvanometer into ammeter, the conversion of galvanometer into voltmeter. Let us know about what is meant by ideal ammeter and ideal voltmeter. An ideal ammeter is one which has ideal ammeter and as well as voltmeter. An ideal ammeter is one which has always low resistance. Means low means what? Almost zero resistance. Zero resistance. What about ideal ammeter? Ideal voltmeter. An ideal voltmeter is one which has infinite resistance. Infinite resistance. What about practical ammeter? ammeter, and also practical voltmeter. A practical ammeter is one which has low resistance, as low as possible, because inclusion of ammeter in a circuit should not change the main circuit resistance and main circuit current. What about practical voltmeter? A practical voltmeter is one which has very high resistance. Remember, these two are not possible because we cannot design or construct an ammeter or voltmeter having zero resistance and as well as infinite resistance. It is not possible. Theoretically only it is possible. But practically what is possible? These two are possible. Because whatever ammeter and voltmeter we use in the lab, that ammeter will have always low resistance, and the voltmeter which we use in the lab for experiment purpose will always have high resistance. Practically these two are possible. These two are not practically possible, only theoretically possible, but not practically. But practically these two are possible. Okay, and key points to be remembered is ammeter should be connected in a circuit always in series, voltmeter should be connected in a circuit always in parallel. So, in this chapter, we studied too many things. What are all the things we studied? First, we studied about what is meant by, what is the cause of magnetism. Then we studied about the definition like magnetic effect of current, mechanical effect of current. We studied about the rule, that is right hand clasp rule, and also we studied about the rule like Fleming's left hand rule. We studied Biot and Savart rule. We studied Ampere's rule, and also we derived the expression for the force acting on a charged particle while moving in a combined field, that means Lorentz force equation. And we studied about a device known as cyclotron, which is used to accelerate the charged particle, and also velocity selector, that means combined field, electric and magnetic field at right angles to each other. Then what is the condition of velocity selector? That also we derived, and using the condition of velocity selector we expand the working of cyclotron, and we derived the expression for the force acting on a single conductor and also the force acting between two straight parallel conductors. Then theory of moving coil galvanometer construction, working, and also the expression for the current flowing through the galvanometer, and how to convert a galvanometer into ammeter and as well as voltmeter. See, all these are the important concepts which appears frequently in your board examination. So that's all about this chapter, moving charges and magnetism. I am going to conclude this chapter. Thank you all.